AWS User Group reInvent recap for December 2021. So welcome, my name is Chris, I'm part of the user group. Welcome to everybody who's watching. So hopefully within YouTube you can hear me and see me, and also it'd be great if somebody could put something into the chat just to confirm that everyone can hear me and see me, and go from there. And if my screen is not being shared, sorry, user error. Sorry guys, I'll try and share my screen properly as well. Sorry about that. Okay, so welcome aboard everybody. As well. Oh yes, thank you everyone who can into the chat. Thank you for Andy, Random, Zintu, Gus, and Henel for saying hi and confirming that we can talk to each other as well. So yeah, welcome aboard. So just going to quickly go through some stuff. So we'll get to our speakers very, very soon. First up, a sponsorship announcement. Now, I haven't figured out how to restream to get a drum roll going, so we'll just do a pretend drum roll, please. So we're proud to announce that we are now proudly sponsored by Datacom. So just to be clear, the user group continues to be community-led and user-focused group, which is inclusive of everybody. So we're still very much a community group, and we're really excited to bring on board Datacom as a sponsor to help grow the community. So please stay tuned for new types of events and maybe even some swag. And so we're definitely still a community group. So Datacom has very generously sponsored us, which will help cover some of our costs for streaming services and meetup and so forth as well. But we're absolutely still a community-led group as well. So nothing's going to change there. So most of you are probably aware that AWS had its reInvent for 2021 recently for the week starting 29th of November. This year, it was a combination of in-person in Las Vegas and also virtual. 2020, it was purely virtual, and pre that, it was in person. One of the things about the reInvent is that lots of features and lots of services come out. So it's all very, very hard to keep track of, and it can be a bit like drinking from a fire hose. So we have some people speaking today. We have 5 of them to talk through various features that have been released. We've got lucky to have Terence White. Terence works for Land Information New Zealand in Wellington. He's also an AWS community builder. We have Tom Fenton from Magic Software in Christchurch. Scott Patterson from AWS in Wellington. Gathika Gurij from AC3 in Auckland, and Gathika is an AWS APN ambassador. And also Saga Donthanini from Deloitte in Wellington, who is also an AWS APN ambassador. And our first speaker is Terence White. So I will just hand over to Terence, and just give me 1 second while I bring Terence up on the screen and bring up his presentation. So welcome, Terence. Welcome to present, and I'll just hand over to you and bring up your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chris. So I don't know about all of you, but I'm always very excited at this time of year when reInvent comes around. There's quite a large number of announcements that happen before the time, and it goes absolutely mental during the keynotes and so on with all the other things that are coming out. I stay up late, I get up early for these things and try and make a note of what is coming out that I'm actually interested in. I can't keep track of everything. There's just too much things been announced over there. Now, this one that went through in 2021, there wasn't any major kickers that came through, but there was a lot of nice stuff that I think that in Toite Te Whenua Land Information New Zealand, we might be able to use. So just a quick rundown. I work for Land Information New Zealand, Enterprise Platforms Manager, and we use some AWS in LINS. We have quite a number of AWS accounts, quite a number of systems up and running over there. We've got some data in S3, as you might imagine, from a government department that makes maps and does surveys and so on. And we have a large amount of development work going on. If you look at that graph, we're also increasing our spend in the AWS environment at, I don't know, 30 degrees month on month. So yeah, we're definitely getting into AWS in a big way in our environment here. Now, instead of picking any release and then going into great detail on it, I went through and I thought there's a bunch of things that we're interested in our department, and I'll give a couple of seconds on each one. I promised I won't be more than 10 minutes over here. So, first thing that got announced that we're interested in was the new Graviton 3 chips that are now in preview. If you want to, and we do, you can apply to get access to the environment and try them out. The new Graviton 3 chips, for those who don't know, are an alternative to using Intel or AMD chips. It runs on the ARM architecture, and it's chips that AWS themselves have developed, and they're optimized for things like web servers and so on. But what we'll be looking at using them for in our environment is for batch processing of images. So we have a system live on the internet called Basemaps that gets a lot of images from councils and so on around New Zealand, and we have to process these things in batches. And we like to just spin up a huge amount of servers, ram through a bunch of these things, and if we can do it on a processing environment that goes through faster, or it does it more efficiently, we can probably save some money. We'll be quite keen on it from that point of view. We're also looking at AWS Outposts because we can't wait for 2024. Thanks, Chris. We're looking at AWS Outposts, and there was some announcement about some different form factor outposts coming through, which might be of more of interest to us than getting a giant big rack and then we only need a small part of it for onshore type of processing and so on. So we're going to keep an eye out and take a look at that when that's available. There's announcements about new AMD EPYC chips, and they're available in a new M6 instance type. We're interested in this as well because, like I said, we do a lot of processing of images, and we're going to give them a bit of a run through. They are typically cheaper than the equivalent Intel instance size for the size and size. Can we get better performance? We don't know. We're going to have a bit of a play and see. I know AMD has done some wonderful things in the last couple of years around scaling up and around the Zen 3 architecture, around the cache coherence and stuff like that. So we're going to see if we can get some benefits out of that. Like most people who do development, we do run ECS Fargate, and we do use the ECR repository to put our Docker images into that we're deploying into the Fargate environment. And there was an announcement about allowing pull-through repos for ECR. So our developers we'll be looking at that to see if that can save us from having to use third-party options. Instead, we might just be able to keep it all in the cloud. Good for us and good for them. And my own particular area, there was the announcement of the new Inspector product. So for those who aren't aware, Inspector is AWS's vulnerability scanner. And the old version, you could run it on your EC2 instances, and it would pretty much stay within a particular account. The new version 2 Inspector is going to be organization aware, pretty much like a guard duty and security hub and a bunch of other services are. And you can just, tick a box and then it goes and deploys itself across your environment. It can do continual scanning as opposed to you having to schedule once a week or once a day or however often you want to schedule the vulnerability scanning. And it can also scan your ECR repos as well, which we'll be looking to implement too. Now, given as how we're a government department, we have permission to deploy into Sydney. We do not have permission to deploy into other AWS regions around the world, other than when we absolutely have to because the services are global or because there is no equivalent service in the Sydney region. And we do use Control Tower to manage our estate. So Control Tower has announced that a new region deny option is coming out, which means that we don't have to do that sort of thing using SCPs anymore, which we kind of like. It's always good to use the managed service checkboxes rather than write your own workaround solutions. You never know if you've missed something or you're going to break something when you deploy it. AWS is also bringing out a IP address management or a network address management tool, and we would be keeping track of our IP addresses inside the AWS environment in this tool. We have a large amount of accounts, large amounts of VPCs, and this will help us keep track of those. We're currently running basically the equivalent of a paper-based register. We've got it stored in our wiki, and this is probably going to be a little better. We'll have a look into it. And AWS Shield Advanced has now announced the ability to automate some of your protections from the products. If there's a layer 7 DDoS attack, we've just recently become Shield Advanced customers for some of our internet-facing products. So I'll be looking at that in the next couple of weeks. We're a large storage customer. We have a lot in S3, and there were some announcements around the changing of retrieval times for Glacier. So it's no longer going to be a couple of minutes, it's going to be a couple of seconds. And the pricing's changed. They've been dropping prices in the offerings over here as well as improving the retrieval times. So we'll be quite keen on looking at that. We are also looking at moving another 180 terabytes of data into S3. So this is particularly of importance to us. I'm running a bit short of here, but we'll carry on. So we use Kinesis to capture our CloudWatch logs in a central logging account, and having the ability to run that on demand instead of allocating a particular bandwidth to those Kinesis environments is going to be of interest to us. We might end up making a saving on that there. Know that the applications you run aren't 24/7, and because they're not 24/7, they have usage patterns that might favor an on-demand environment rather than a pre-allocated amount of capacity there. We do have DynamoDB tables like everybody else does, and like everybody else does, there might be some of them where we're not using them on a frequent basis. So what we're going to do is investigate the infrequent access option for DynamoDB, see if it's going to make us a savings, see what trade-offs we need to do, and bring it in. We have a lot of interest in the Kotlin SDK that was announced because we are using Kotlin for building one of our systems in the cloud. At the moment, the developers in that environment are using the Java SDK, and they're basically having things written in Java and things written in Kotlin, the actual business logic and stuff like that. And you've got the AWS stuff, AWS SDK things in a different language. So that we're going to keep an eye on and take a jump at that one. And the new CDK version 2 is now general availability. So we use CDK. We've grown to love it. And CDK v2 is apparently better. I don't use it myself, but I know somebody who does, and he's going to be giving you guys a bit of a talk right now. So I'm going to hand back over to Chris. This is what Linz is interested in the reInvent announcements. And next couple of months is going to be quite busy trying to get through all of these things here. Back to you, Chris. Can't hear you, Chris.
Thanks, Terence, for telling me I was on mute. Sorry,
Yep.
now you can hear me. Very good. Okay, that was great, Terence. Thanks heaps. Okay, and a great segue into our next presentation, which is Tom Fenton, and Tom is from Magic Software in Christchurch. And I'll just bring up Tom's presentation. Now, if I can find it. Now, just to let people know that Tom's had some screen sharing issues, so I'm going to be sure he's sent me the presentation to me, and I'm going to be sharing his presentation through my screen. So there's a little bit of coordination issues and so forth, and he needs to tell me to move to the next screen. Please forgive us for that. So I'll just bring up the presentation now, and over to you, Tom.
Thanks very much, Chris, and thank you for that summary of all those new features, Terence. So I'm Tom Fenton. I'm the Cloud Services Manager for Magic Software. I'm based in Christchurch. So Magic Software's got offices in Melbourne, Auckland, Napier, Christchurch, and we're also in the US as well. So we're primarily in the local government and health sector markets. And today I'm going to cover the AWS reInvent announcement for the general availability of Construct Hub and the AWS CDK v2. Thank you, Chris. Get coordinated. So firstly, just a wee bit of background about the AWS Cloud Development Kit. So it's an open source software development framework that you can use to define your cloud application resources using familiar programming languages such as C#, TypeScript, Java, Python, and they've also got support for Go. AWS CDK v1 was released back in July 2019, and AWS have been working hard with the AWS developer community to make improvements. Earlier this year, they announced the v2 developer preview, and now as part of reInvent, they've announced general availability for AWS CDK v2, along with the Constructs Hub. For v2, the focus has primarily been on productivity improvements for developers working with CDK projects. So just to give you an overview of what the major changes are in v2, in AWS CDK v1, they'd carefully partitioned the construct library into many small packages. So there was one per service, so you only needed to download the packages for the services you wanted to use, like EC2, S3, RDS. And anytime you wanted to add a new AWS service to your application, you would have to drop back to the terminal to install another package. And with NPM, it was very important to ensure all of these packages had the exact same version to avoid having multiple copies installed of some of the libraries, which then wouldn't interoperate properly. It became very hard to manage dependencies correctly. Also in v1, experimental packages were kind of mixed in with some of the standard packages, so you could get unexpected surprises when you were deploying your application. So now in v2, AWS have consolidated all of the construct library into a single package called AWS CDK lib. v2 only includes stable APIs, which comply with semantic versioning. Experimental modules that are still work in progress are not included in AWS CDK lib. Now individual packages will use an alpha suffix, so they can be included in a managed way that you can control. Once a module has been deemed stable, then it will be included into the AWS CDK lib. And another major feature they've added is CDK Watch, which I'll cover in a bit more detail later on. So this is just a little code snippet showing a version 1, how you would import your libraries when you're writing your code. So you have to import, you can see each one's from an individual package. We've got AWS EC2, AWS ECS, and the ECS pattern library. And just next slide, please, Chris. So now we've got we're importing all of our packages from the single library, just with different. We're importing several modules there, EC2, ECS. So it's much nicer to deal with. We just have to have a single library in our requirements, and that allows us just to. If we want to suddenly start using RDS, then we can just start using RDS dot or add it to our import. Yeah, next slide. So one of the other announcements they've made is for the general availability of Construct Hub. Now this is a one-stop destination for finding, reusing and sharing constructs published by AWS partners, third parties and the developer community. We define constructs as classes which define a piece of system state. Constructs can be composed together to form high-level building blocks. And if you've used the CDK, this is where we've got our level 3 constructs that we can build and package and deploy to the community. So we've got just an example of what the Construct Hub looks like. It's a central location where users can find a comprehensive collection of constructs to help them build their applications. Next slide. And you can search for constructs based on keywords such as the name of the AWS services used, so EKS, DynamoDB, or the author. And this screenshot shows an example of searching for constructs that include the bucket keyword and support Python. The construct detail page shows instructions on how to install the package and the API reference for the classes, interfaces, enums, and data types in the library. So I wanted to talk about CDK Watch. You can now increase your development speed by using CDK Watch. The CDK CLI introduces a new mode of operation, CDK Watch, and there are 2 new flags for CDK deploy, hot swap, and no rollback. CDK Watch monitors your code and assets for changes and automatically performs the optimal form of deployment whenever a change is detected. This can be CDK assets like AWS Lambda functions, container images, or AWS step functions. When you're using CDK Watch and make a change to your code, a warning message will be shown in the terminal to let you know that the change is being hot swapped. For example, if we have a CDK project with a Docker app directory and change a file that is copied into the Docker image, then a new image is built and pushed directly to the API service, bypassing CloudFormation entirely. This deliberately creates drift, and it should only be used for development. Never use it in your production stacks. So I've got bright red text there. So now hot swap deployments are faster, but lack some of CloudFormation's robustness when updating an entire stack. This is ideal for performing rapid code compile test loops in your development environment. If you need to disable hot swapping while running Watch, you can pass the no hot swap flag. And that means that anytime you make a change, the changes will actually go through a full CDK deploy using the normal CloudFormation updates. If you need to remove drift between CloudFormation and your application, you can simply run the CDK deploy command, and that will perform a full deployment. It's also to perform a hot swap deployment without running Watch in the background by using the CDK deploy command with the hot swap option. And not all changes can be hot swapped. Watch will fall back to a full CloudFormation deployment. So, for example, if we were changing a VPC by maybe we're increasing the number of net gateways that we've got, that's going to require a full CloudFormation update rather than something that can be hot swapped. And as I mentioned earlier, it's only for hot swapping is only for Lambda functions, ECS container services, and step functions currently. And just to wrap up, so CDK v1 will continue to be fully supported until June 2022, at which time it will enter maintenance mode. During the maintenance phase, v1 will receive critical bug fixes and security patches only. New features will be developed exclusively for v2 during the maintenance phase. And on June 2023, support will end for AWS CDK v1. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're as excited about getting your hands on with CDK v2 as I am. Back to Chris. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you heaps, Tom. Yeah, the CDK is becoming pretty big in AWS deployments as well, and it's something I'm going to have to learn next year. And yeah, that was really good. Thank you heaps. And I'll just bring over to our next speaker. Just give me a second to take Tom off the screen in this presentation. And we will bring up Scott. So Scott is Scott Patterson. He's from AWS in Wellington as a senior solutions architect, and he's been doing AWS for a long, long time. And I'll just bring Scott's presentation up on the screen, and I'll hand over to Scott.
Sweet, thank you, Chris. I'm also pretty excited about CDK. Big fan of that tool. I'm Scott. I've been to about 3 reInvents in person in Las Vegas, and they're usually a highlight of my year. The virtual one is a bit different. It was still quite exciting. I had to get up a lot earlier in the morning, but I still like that part of the year. So today I'm going to be talking about sustainability. I'm going to give you a quick fire update about what we're doing sustainability transformation wise and how we've been approaching it from at AWS. And then I'll call out at the end some of the related things from reInvent. To introduce the idea, sustainability touches many areas of our economy, from how we decarbonize our business operations to water conservation to responsible employment. And these are all important elements of building sustainability in our organizations. It's really important to note that sustainability touches everyone, and multiple sectors of society have expressed interest in sustainability, and using it as a measure for what companies they'll work with, and what companies they'll invest in, and even what companies they'll buy from, which is kind of key. Additionally, socially responsible investing or impact investing, along with environmental, social, governance criteria, those sorts of things now regularly appear in the media and in investment prospectuses, with interest levels reaching all-time highs this year, 2021. Just note, recent data from Morningstar showed global assets sustainable funds hit 1.25 billion US in the third quarter of 2020, which is another record high. AWS customers are familiar with digital transformation and have learned how to use the cloud and microservices and DevOps and chaos engineering to speed up their technology deployments and to build new products that are digitally connected. All those things that we've heard about from our AWS User Group talking about before. And now they're starting a new sustainability transformation using those same tools, but this time focused on decarbonization. With a quick LinkedIn search, you'll find a trend of new roles in the industry. Roles like carbon ops managers and carbon strategy directors are popping up. I think it's really neat. So we've always found that customers and communities appreciate what we can share from an Amazon perspective and the efforts we're undertaking to meet our sustainability goals there. And one of the early initiatives we also took on was in September 2019 when Amazon announced the Climate Pledge. This is a commitment to be a bit more aggressive on becoming net zero carbon, meaning we want to meet our goals a full 10 years before the Paris Agreement, which was set to 2050 as the global net zero carbon goal. Scientists tell us that we've a limited window to make unprecedented headway in order to limit that global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. I think no one company or organization can do this on its own, and everyone must do their part. Business doesn't exactly operate in a vacuum. So to drive collective cross-sector action on the climate crisis, Amazon co-founded the Climate Pledge based on the conviction that global businesses are responsible, accountable, and able to act on the climate crisis. So our public stated goals are net zero carbon by 2040, powering operations with 100% renewable energy, which we initially committed to reach by 2030, but we're now on a path to meet that target by 2025, 5 years early. a $2 billion equity fund so we can help the world find solutions to difficult to decarbonize problems. And the Climate Pledge is open to all companies who also want to challenge and commit to hitting net carbon zero 2040. And the 3 principles for others to join are 1, regular reporting, 2, carbon elimination, and 3, credible offsets. And we're making really hopeful progress with 201 signatories across 26 industries coming from 21 countries. And here's a sample of some of the signatories who've joined the pledge. And we've recently also added Xero and Canva as well. And we understand this is a journey. We're also on the journey. We've been tackling initiative after initiative to make progress. Many of Amazon's sustainability projects have been driven through the AWS professional services team and using AWS technologies as well. On this side, you'll see on the slide, you'll see the types of initiatives we've been taking on to drive that sustainability impact and transformation for our various businesses. So we published the first Amazon sustainability report in 2019 and published our 3rd report this year. We've ordered 100,000 custom electric delivery vehicles from Rivian. Those are cool little machines. And we've reduced the weight of our outbound packaging by over 36% and eliminated more than 1 million tons of packaging material since 2015. So that's the equivalent of 2 billion shipping boxes. AWS is also on the journey. We've put measures in place to utilize increasing amounts of renewable sources. We've introduced water conservation practices and are producing AWS ARM architecture processes for lower energy utilization. That's that Graviton 3 there, top right corner. 2021, we helped to create the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact. This is another sustainability pledge for companies with data centers in Europe. So watch out for that one. Right, so with cloud, you can use what you want. You can use it whenever you want, and that allows everyone to really drive up high utilization. This type of efficiency is critical, and that's why 451 Research, part of the S&P Global Market Intelligence, found that the same task can be completed on AWS with an 88% lower carbon footprint compared to the average surveyed US enterprise data center. AWS commissioned a report on carbon emissions of the cloud versus the typical enterprise data center, and we found that AWS is significantly more energy efficient and has a significantly smaller carbon footprint than most US data centers. And of that, 61% of the carbon reduction is attributable to more efficient servers and higher server utilization, so we can have better densities. 11% to more efficient data center facilities, and 17% to reduced electricity consumption and renewable energy resources. AWS is committed to shifting its data centers to 100% renewable energy by 2030 through things like power purchasing agreements. And we're on track to meet that goal 5 years early in 2025, as I was talking about before. In Asia Pacific, there was another 451 Research report that found that on average, organizations moving their apps from on-premise data centers to cloud infrastructure in APAC can expect their energy usage and associated carbon footprint to reduce by 78%. All right, let's go over what was announced to do with sustainability at re:Invent. So in 2020, we released the Graviton 2 ARM processor. Terence was talking about that, which delivered up to 40% better price performance over the current generation x86 based instances. And then at the most recent re:Invent this year, we announced that the next generation Graviton 3, which is 25% faster again than Graviton 2. What we might not have picked up and might not have noticed here during this announcement is that they're actually a lot more efficient, using 60% less energy than comparable EC2 instances, and that's why That's why it makes them cheaper as well. We're introducing the new sustainability pillar to our well-architected framework to help organizations improve their sustainability in the cloud. This is a real continual effort focused on energy reduction and efficiency of all types of workloads. And in practice, this pillar helps developers and cloud architects surface the trade-offs and highlight patterns and best practices and avoid anti-patterns. Example there is selecting an efficient programming language or adopting a modern algorithms to do deep learning and machine learning, using efficient data storage techniques, and deploying correct sizes on efficient infrastructure. And keyword there is efficient infrastructure. The shared responsibility model also gets an update because it applies to sustainability as well. So AWS is responsible for the sustainability of the cloud. That's the things like electricity supply and the renewable energy, while AWS customers are responsible for sustainability in the cloud. And that's going back to the things like making good choices about running on efficient infrastructure, that sort of thing. Okay, another thing we announced, the AWS Carbon Footprint tool. This will provide carbon volume data on your AWS services and predict the future footprint based on existing workloads. You'll be able to get advice on how to optimize your workloads using environmental best practices for carbon reduction. And you'll be able to use this tool for things like carbon ops. And I think that's a really interesting development, and especially as it kind of opens a new IT industry of sorts. So I'll leave you today with Werner Vogel saying, go build, but recognize he also says, if you provision something, use it. Don't let it sit around doing nothing. Thanks, team, and back to you, Chris.
Cool, thanks heaps, Scott. That was great. I imagine the carbon footprint tool will end up used quite a lot in companies' annual reporting, etc., on what their organisation does. So, yeah, that and all the other stuff is really good. So, thanks heaps, Scott. I'll bring Gathika onto the screen as well. So, just give me 1 second, and I just need to find Gathika's presentation. Here we go. Okay, so we've got Gathika from AC3 in Auckland. So welcome, Gathika. Gathika is an AWS APN ambassador, and I'll hand it over to you, Gathika. All yours. Hey, Gathika, you're on mute, so we can't hear you. Sorry.
Yes, it has to. Yep, thank you. Thanks for the introductions. And yep, I'm Gathika, and I work as a solutions architect at AC3. So recently I've been helping some of our customers to migrate and also optimize their solutions in AWS, and especially the database solutions. And then with that context, I found a couple of announcements in this year's reInvent quite interesting. The first one, actually RDS custom for Microsoft SQL Server. And to be honest, this is not entirely new. So AWS introduced RDS custom for RDS a few months ago, but then again, who uses Oracle these days? So what really is RDS custom? So it's a hybrid between a true RDS, where the customer does not have direct access to the OS underlying, and on the other hand, running a database on a EC2, where every detail of DB management is customer's responsibility. So quite simply, RDS custom allows you full privilege access on the host operating system. So if you look at this diagram, so a traditional RDS sense, the customer would be creating a database RDS instance, which is shown in number 1, and then once they do that, they will have access to the database only through an instance endpoint, which is shown in number. But RDS Custom, it will give you access to the host OS, where you can customize their software to some improvements or tuning in there. And then, so with RDS Custom, AWS essentially removes another set of barriers which used to stop customers from migrating the SQL Server workloads into RDS. So I've listed a few items here, but then the overall idea is if you could not migrate your RDS into migrate your database with RDS due to lack of access into host OS, now you can migrate it to RDS and let AWS do the infrastructure management. So for an example, you had Microsoft Dynamics or SharePoint type of workload. You couldn't migrate your database or Microsoft SQL database into RDS because it requires very specific configurations in the underlying environment. Now you can use RDS Custom and migrate it. For my experience, I've been working with a customer who had a Microsoft SQL database, but they had a legacy piece of use case where they were ingesting some data, and that data was coming in as a file, and due to performance and network issues, they had chosen to write the file into the disk of the database server and import it from there. And they couldn't migrate their workload into RDS because they couldn't write the file into the disk of that RDS instance. But now with RDS Custom, they can potentially look at migrating into RDS. That's a way forward. And then the next item is actually Amazon DevOps Guru for us. Again, continuing the theme of this year's reInvent, this is also an incremental change to a existing service. So where they are adding a new capability to the DevOps Guru service. But what this essentially does is using machine learning to automatically identify things like utilization of resources, database bottlenecks, and misbehaving SQL queries. And also, it gives you some recommendations to solutions or recommended solutions to remediate these issues. And under the hoods, what it actually does is performing some anomaly detection on DB metric. And given that DB load metric measures the level of activity in the database, so this is essentially a great metric to understand the health of your database. And then also what it gives you is cause of the problem, potential cause of the problem, and some recommendations to fix it. And the best part of this capability is that you don't need to be a database or machine learning expert to use it. And you can use this tool to troubleshoot and fix your database performance issues. So that's me. Thank you. And over to you, Scott.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. That was great. RDS Custom looks to be a really neat feature that I can think of a few customers that could quite possibly be a really great use for. So yeah, that was really good for me. Thank you. Okay, we've got one speaker left, and that is Sega. And I'll just switch over. So just give me 1 second. So Sega is based in Wellington. He works for Deloitte. He's also an AWS APN ambassador. And all over to you, Sega.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Sagar, and I work for Deloitte as a cloud architect, and I'm based in Wellington. So yeah, coming back to reInvent announcement, there are too many to really go through. But today I just picked some of them to just share a bit of a high-level detail with you guys, and we will crack into that. Yeah, basically, I'm going to talk on these 4 releases. Basically, kind of working on a lot of them, a lot on these particular things recently. One is Athena cross-account federated query, and the second one is S3 event notification with Event Bridge, and a recycle bin for EBS snapshots and EBS snapshots archive. Cool. Let us get into the Athena one. So basically, currently the Athena federated queries are using Lambda connectors to get into a different data sources. And you can use these connectors to query a different data sources, even the on-premises or a DynamoDB. And you have all these connectors, pre-built connectors within the serverless application model of repository within the AWS. But as on today, you can only invoke a Lambda function which in the same account, not in a different account. With this new announcement, you can actually invoke cross-account federated queries using Athena. So which definitely adds a bit more flexibility around customers who are using multi-accounts, and they have like data stores across all the accounts. And if they would like to use only one particular account as a kind of Athena account to query all the data sources. So this is going to be a good data kind of Athena update in my point of view. I'll just give you a bit of an overview of this particular service, how it works. So, but this cross-account query doesn't work for non-Hive kind of data source. So basically, you can't do it for Amazon S3, but you can do rest of the data stores like DynamoDB or Redis or SQL servers, and for MySQL or other HBase in EMR. Cool. So going on next. So there are some considerations and limitations for this update. I'm just actually struggling to see the full screen. Excuse me, guys. Yeah, so this particular Athena federated query is supported on only Athena Engine version 2. And views, you cannot use views with federated data sources. And also write operations like insert into are not supported with this. And if you would like to use secret managers with this federated query, you have to, you must configure an Amazon VPC private endpoint for secrets manager. And this is available in Sydney region. I've only mentioned Sydney region because it's also available in other regions, but Sydney region is like most appropriate for us. So this is it's actually available in most of the regions. So going on next. So the cross-account federated query feature is available for non-Hive Metastore data connectors that use Lambda-based data source. The feature is not available for the AWS Glue data catalog data source type. This is like more about our reference point in this presentation on the line. So let's get on to the second one. This S3 event notification with event bridge. So currently we do have a capability within AWS. We have a capability like when there is an put object event, you can still invoke a Lambda, put it into SQS and all sorts of things. What's changing with this is basically you can put this into an event bridge, and this brings into a lot more possibilities into the mix. So just a bit of an introduction about Event Bridge. Event Bridge is basically easy to use for a building application that react quickly and efficiently to changes in your S3 objects. This is basically this particular announcement makes a new directly wide model that faster and more reliable and more developer friendly. So you no longer need to make additional copies of your object or write specialized or single purpose code to process event. And what is new actually? So with this particular feature, we are getting like advanced filtering. Currently, you normally what happens in event-driven architectures are you take a notification, put object notification from you invoke a Lambda. For anything extra, the Lambda has to go back to the S3 bucket and check the metadata and stuff. With this particular release, all heavy lifting has been done from AWS. You just basically define the rules, the key name and time range. And this is more efficient definitely than using a Lambda function. So it also reduces the cost. And also you don't get really get flooded with all the events. You only get the events which you are interested in. So that's one major advantage with this feature. And the second one is like multiple destinations. With an existing model, it's basically a one destination you can push into. With this event bridge, you basically use you just define rules where you want to deliver that event. Like it can be a multiple destination as well. So it can be 18 AWS services, including step functions, Kinesis firehose, Kinesis data streams, and HTTP targets, and etc. So that's one of the other advantage with a new feature. The last one is fast and reliable invocation. Obviously, this is a direct wired model, so you will have a faster invocation within the applications. That's about this particular release. So the next one, recycle bin for EBS snapshots. Currently, all the snapshots in my personal experience I've seen with our customer is basically there is a dirty script which has been executing in their account, and it's deleting some of the snapshots which are actually intended to like store retain for a longer period of time. So there was no other way basically to restore those snapshots once you delete it. So with this, I think new feature, definitely it helps some customers to retain their EBS snapshots in case of an accidental deletion. This can be very useful, especially in a case of production environment where legally customers are obliged, or legal or compliance reasons, customers are obliged to retain their snapshots for a longer period of time. An accidental deletion can be definitely more concerning stuff. So with this feature, basically you can define rules for the recycle bin, and you can select which EBS snapshots can be deleted and which cannot be deleted, and it can be based on the tags, or you can select account wide and stuff. And you can control the permissions with the regular IAM stuff. Basically, you can whoever is the recycle bin administrator can only empty the recycle bin. Rest all people can only get to basically can delete the snapshots but cannot delete the snapshot from the recycle. It's definitely a cool feature in my view for some of the customers, and especially in the production kind of environment. You can tag your critical, which is like a critical snapshots which you do not want to by accidentally delete, and tag them with a specific keys and define when you can retain them, even though within an accident deletion scenario as well. Coming on to the last one in my agenda, which is EBS Snapshots Archive. Currently, EBS Snapshot Archive is basically a lower cost tile which stores a full copy of snapshots point in time EBS snapshots. Unlike an EBS snapshot of a volume, which is basically incremental, it doesn't take a full copy of every time. It just takes the first time it's a full copy, and then onwards, like every snapshot is like an incremental. The snapshot archive is full. It's not like a EBS snapshot. It's like a full copy of that particular snapshot. It contains all the blocks written into the volume at the moment, and at the moment the snapshot was taken. To recreate a volume from EBS snapshot archive, you restore the EBS snapshot to the standard tier first, and then create a EBS volume of the restored snapshot. So just an additional note, as I mentioned, the snapshot archive stores the complete snapshot, not the incremental one. And the restore times, retrieval of your snapshot could take multiple hours based on the size of the archive, but AWS expect retrieval to complete typically within 24 to 72 hours, which is which you need to factor if you want to basically an immediate restore, and a snapshot archive is not really a good option. And also once you snapshot archive the snapshot, it has to be there for at least 90 days. So you only consider archiving those snapshots which are retained more than 90 days. So what are the use cases basically where we can use this snapshot archive? Basically, a lot of customers have like a single volume. They just take it, take a snapshot in the beginning and they just want to keep it there for some time. So in those scenarios, basically you just archive that snapshot and keep it for a longer term. And also a need to store a full snapshots for business policy or compliance reasons. And EBS snapshots archive stores full snapshots with no backward references to other snapshots. So this is a good kind of option because it's a very reduced price when you compare to normal standard snapshots. And there is a need to archive monthly or quarterly or yearly snapshots to save cost, then this is a good option as well with this. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you all. And back to Chris.
Hey, thanks. So that was great. Hey, I'm just going to bring everybody back up onto stage, and just time for some questions. We don't have too many questions in the comments, but if you've got any questions, feel free to bring them through. Who have I not got up? Scott and Kathika. So I have a question for Tom on the CDK. So just say you've got an organization that's using infrastructure as code right now, and they're doing a pretty good job, but they're just using plain CloudFormation, and they're keen to transition to using the Cloud Development Kit. Do you have any sort of like tips or ideas as to how an organization can start to transition towards using the CDK?
It's a good question. So we've been actually using the V2 for the last 3 months, and we were lucky to have a greenfields project. So that has actually been really good because we've been able to sort of get our hands dirty with it without breaking anything. And I think like just having that sort of basic, sort of understanding of CloudFormation is going to really help you, because basically CDK synthesizes to a CloudFormation stack. So if something's not quite what you expect, you can always look at the synthesized CloudFormation. That's really useful. I'd say you'd want to start identifying sort of common patterns that you use, and maybe sort of thinking about reusable components that you could use in other projects that you do. We've written some sort of constructs for some of our auto-scaling groups and some of our like access log buckets. I think initially we sort of jumped in and started writing this massive long CDK file, which ended up being too long, but we've sort of refactored it quite a lot, and it's a much better organized application now. But it's sometimes it's quite amazing just like how few lines of CDK and how many lines of CloudFormation they explode out into. And CDK is also some of the constructs, like particularly some of the level 2 and level 3, they're opinionated, so it's worth just sort of getting your head around what they're going to do. And you can always drop back to level 1 constructs if that's how you want to roll. But for example, like the VPC construct's quite, it's got a certain way of naming and how it expects your VPC to look, but it's really interesting. Just sort of looking under the hood what it does.
Cool. So is level 1's almost like a one-to-one match with CloudFormation resource types, is it?
Yeah, it is. So and then level 2s are sort of like higher level ones, which might sort of be like, say, a bucket or a VPC, and then level 3 constructs are where it's more complicated, like multiple kind of resources. For example, like deploying a Fargate service, which is going to do everything you need, and it's going to do the like the IAM side of things for you as well.
Okay, cool. Thanks heaps. So we don't have a huge number of other questions really. We've got a few people writing some comments about what they liked in reInvent. We've got Ground Station, IPM Cloud WAN, which Cam's not that boring, especially IPM. Well, IPM it may be a little bit boring, but it's rather important as well, and so forth. So if you've got any questions, you've got about 10 seconds to put them to the chat, or else we'll probably be just winding up. Oh, Terence might have something.
I'm going to jump in and say a question since I'm live on camera. This is for Tom over here. So how far does CDK trail behind CloudFormation when it comes to new things being released there?
So primarily we've been dealing with like some of the beta releases, and they've been keeping up with the CloudFormation spec quite closely. They seem to have some quite good tooling, and that they can sort of just build the changes into it really quickly. So usually when they release 2.00, they actually release 2.10 very quickly after. So I don't know if that was because there was a bug or if there was a new feature, but and also with the experimental features. So sometimes there are those experimental packages which are sort of maybe where they're trying to set in stone how it's actually going to work, or it might be something that's going to change. But yeah, like during the beta phase, that it's been keeping up with the CloudFormation specs quite closely.
Cool. Terence, this might be asking a bit. I don't know how well you know the new IPM service, but Zuntu has asked a question about IPM implementation and multiple accounts. So if you don't know off the top of your head, that's absolutely fine. But if you do know, it'd be great. You could...
Yeah, I don't know yet. So I did look at the launch announcement. I am going over the next maybe 2 or 3 months to be implementing it in our multi-account environment. So perhaps a later presentation or a later catch up, we can give you an answer over there. We have many accounts in many different tiers within AWS. So we've got a non-prod, pre-prod, and prod, and we've got common accounts that have access to all of those as well. So don't know, we'll give it a swing, and we'll see what it's like.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Terence. Any more questions in the chat, or any of the other presenters want to ask a question to anyone else? I'll give people just a few more seconds, and if not, we'll I'll come back to me and I'll wrap things up. So I'm just going to bring up my screen share, so someone has something they want to bring up. A few seconds, just give me a second to bring up my screen, sorry. So
Hello, Matthew.
oh, Matthew's got a question about pricing model is not a blocker.
That would be one of the things that we'd look at when we were looking to bring it in. We do need an IP address management tool, so we're either going to pay for an external product or we're going to get it inside AWS. We'll take a look at it.
Okay, so I'm for some reason having a problem sharing my screen, so I won't share my last screen. Pretty much just a quick wrap up. So obviously this is our last meetup of any type for 2021. Obviously we've had quite a bit virtual this year. Been a challenging year with various COVID restrictions and so forth. So we've had a lack of physical meetups. Also of some events making it quite hard in terms of restrictions. So hopefully in the new year with the new traffic light system and so forth, we might be able to do some more physical meetups, which we're hoping to do across the country as well. So if you've got any suggestions regarding what we can do physical meetups in terms of speeches and workshops and all that sort of stuff, whether you've got one to talk, that'd be really great. Always looking for speakers. Anything else for sponsorship or venues or anything like that, please get in contact with us on probably the best place is Slack, AWS UG NZ. Just put that into the chat. And yeah, anybody who can help out with the community and stuff would be great. So we'll be wrapping it up here. So I'll be ending the stream. Okay, so thank you everyone who presented today. So Terence, Tom, Scott, Gathika, and Sega. And thanks for everybody who watched this and contributed to the chat. So we'll be dropping off now, and I hope you guys have a great Christmas and New Year break. Okay, bye-bye.